Thank you for joining the Sharpest College Football Podcast. I am BuckMetrics, joined as always by Robert Martin. We are here to do the Week 6 review. Robert, Week 6 brought us the return of somebody in our lives who's been absent for about 10 months. His first name begins with a capital F. Can you guess what I'm talking about?
I have a guess, yes. I think that was insane. We're definitely talking about that game a lot, but what a just insane... I didn't see that coming, and it's very shocking. That was nuts. I can't believe that even happened, but yeah.
Yes. For those who don't know, that's capital F fired Billy Napier. Soon to be making another appearance here in about, they'll be dropping on Tuesday, so about 4 days for all the fans out there. All right, if you are new, this is a glossary that we refer to. Take a screen grab of this, or you can check it out. This is my pinned tweet on my Twitter account at BuckMetrics.com. And if you are not new, if you're returning, as you know by now you are, of course, brilliant. And with that, we will get to our Week 6 takeaways in the form of a question. Is Arch the Longhorns' main problem? That's my question here, and I'm going to make a little thesis here. First of all, I can't say that he's not a problem, not a significant problem. I don't know if you remember this play. There was a Texas receiver just running wide open, and Arch only missed it by about 8 yards here. The receiver clearly has just given up at this point. But you know what? In fairness to Mr. Inaccurate Arch, he did not have a lot of time. Now, part of that is because he has, I guess I could say he has in English we say, the pocket presence of a Real Housewife of Beverly Hills. He just looks like he has no clue. He holds onto the ball way too long. It looks like he doesn't know what's going on in the offense half the time. You look here, though, I think part one of the problem here is Texas just couldn't run the ball. Texas running backs had 11 rushes for 15 yards. If you saw, Arch didn't have a lot of time to set his feet. Again, not that it mattered because he was missing guys by a boat plus here. But again, this offensive line is not good. And you know what, Robert? It should be good. I want to go to this graphic I put together. I put together here the national recruiting rank of the Texas program from 2020 through the most recent class. You can see these recruiting ranks nationally. 9th, 14th, 5th, 6th, 3rd, and 1st. This is very Sarkisian-esque. I also want to point out here the yards per rush for each team. The last year of Tom Herman, Texas averaged 5.3 yards per rush. Same thing in Sark's first year, and then it's gone down ever since. 5.2, 5.0, 4.3. 4.5 right now, but it's only 3.5 in the 2 games versus Power 4, so I'm pretty comfortable saying that's going to go down. You might recall one of our favorite Steve Sarkisian quotes was right here before the rushing average went off a cliff, and he said, the ability to run the ball when they're nearly going to run it is critical. Guess what? You failed the critical test then. Or as Robert says, you critically failed the test of not being you, or whatever you want to say.
Yes.
Arch is a problem, but the problem, I saw this up close and personal, it's this coach. He's an awesome recruiter. He's pretty good at drawing up plays, putting it all together in a coherent game plan. He's great when it's tep. If it's somebody that's his own size and weight, not so much. Look, I don't think Arch is the problem, but he's definitely not the solution. I don't think Arch is part of this getting better. I think most of the Texas problems lie with the head coach here.
Yeah, and this is the thing, right? It's really funny because if you remember, I think it wasn't last year. Maybe it was last year, where I said I didn't believe this Texas team. Actually, it was last year, right? Yeah. I said that the problem with this Texas team is they're so reliant on the ability to run the ball. Basically, when you look at it, and I did the comparison, when you go back years with Steve Sarkisian, and basically he needs to have an elite runner to be able to have a top team. And when he doesn't have really strong running backs and strong offensive rushing production, they struggle. And then that happened last year, and the rushing did go down, but everything else was fine, and they went to the SEC championship game and they lost that to Georgia, but mostly it was just papered over because the SEC was weak and they were just okay, and that was Quinn Ewers was saving them, which is crazy because that if you'd said Quinn Ewers is the saving this team, you'd be like, that's crazy, that's not what's happening, but that's apparently what happened. But now that rush is actually lower because, again, that 4.3 is inflated because, again, so the 2 games against P4 is down to 3.5. So that's, again, the other ones would have had, that's like 4.3 in 2024. That's 8 SEC games. They have 1 SEC game so far. So that 4.5 is inflated. That 3.5 is more accurately of what they're doing. That's coming off a cliff. right? So
Yeah.
that is a huge problem for the way Sarkisian schemes up plays. You need to be able to run the ball, and when they think you're going to run the ball, then you can actually open up the passing, and that's the entirety of his offense. And when he had Bijan Robinson, that was great, and he was able to replace that with Jonathan Brooks, okay. But last year, Trey Wisner, okay, didn't do so great, and now you've got Archie Manning leading, obviously, in passing, and also leading in rushing, which is concerning, because that's not what Archie Manning should be. He's not Cam Newton. This is the thing, right? Like, he's a good quarterback. He can be a good quarterback, but he's not Josh Allen. He can be good, but he's not designed to be like, okay, I'm going to throw the ball, and also I'm just going to truck people. That's not what he's supposed to do. The other interesting thing about this is that, because I think it's very clear that Archie Manning is the problem. And if you remember back to when he was recruited and when they got him to come to Texas, the main thing they said was, we want to develop under Steve Sarkisian. We think he's the best person to develop him. Guess that's not working too well right now, because one, he screams out in pain every time he throws the ball, which isn't great, and two, this is not going well. He's not a particularly good quarterback. He's leading the team in rushing, so if you wanted him to develop him into a running back, that's going great. That's going to plan. But if that wasn't what your goal was for him, Manning family, maybe you've got some problems there. No, there's a lot of problems on this Longhorns team. And again, the bigger thing, I think, that the thing that kind of gets swept up into this and not talked about as much, because, and the reason Texas was even a top 10 team was because their only loss was to Ohio State, and they lost a close game to Ohio State on the road at Ohio State. Then they crushed a bunch of G5 teams, and then the first time they play an actual G4 team, they lose in pretty embarrassing fashion too. But the problem is that people are like, oh, Texas wasn't that good. But wait a minute, I'm going to call back here. If Texas isn't really good, then why are we giving Ohio State so much credit for beating a not particularly good Texas team? So I think a lot of people are just like, I think people are like, oh, Texas might be bad, but they're okay because they play competitively against Ohio State. What if Ohio State is bad? What if Ohio State has 3 losses and this Texas team has 5? Like, how does this Texas team compare if that's the way the season ends, right? Because Ohio State should have been tested against Washington, wasn't. This is the thing, right? Like, I think a lot of people are still holding up a positive opinion of this Texas team because of that Ohio State game, and I think that is the real expectation problem here with all this.
Yeah, and Ryan Day he didn't want Sayin to lose that game. Once he got up, by 2 scores, he was very comfortable to just play keep away. I put it this way right now. I think that based on where Sayin is right now, I think Ohio State beats Texas by at least 3 scores if they play today.
Maybe, but I will say though that in that game, Texas decisively outgained Ohio State. It was because of 2 Manning interceptions. That's why Ohio State.
Okay, yeah. In fairness, Arch has cleaned that up since, he said sarcastically.
Yeah, it's much better now. But no, I guess Ohio State has gotten a bit better, but I think that's the real test here. But that's the one question, and I'm sure we'll talk about Ohio State, Illinois at some point in the next day or two. But the thing is, it's okay. If Texas and Ohio State are supposed to be 2 of the top programs in the country, right? And there's a couple of others you can throw in there too. But again, this is not it's not like we're talking about the difference between Ohio State and like Kent State or something. We're talking about 1 and 1A here. Why is it that at one place you've got 2 quarterbacks that I guess you could theoretically say were even? Why is Sayin progressing better than Manning is progressing? Why is that happening? Because that shouldn't be happening if those 2 programs are roughly equivalent.
Yeah, and in Sayin's second year in the program, this is Arch's 3rd year in the program too.
Yes.
It's just a couple of the takeaways on this are, it's funny to go back and just think about how even Ole Miss had the Manning name in one of the end zones when Arch was on his official visit. You remember how silly that was for this guy? And I want to repeat a point that I made. It might have been last week, or I know it was earlier this year. There's only so many times you can fault Texas to say, gosh, you're underachieving. No, pollsters, you underachieve because he does this every year except for 1 year, basically.
Yeah.
His teams just don't do what they're supposed to do from a talent standpoint. And pollsters, you need to own that. It's clear to us who kind of get it, but I don't know why they don't. I don't know why.
It's weird because I think in my preseason I said that I liked Archie Manning to win the Heisman, but I didn't like Texas for literally any other future. And I said, He might not, like I said, Archie Manning might be able to win basically he might be able to win the Heisman in spite of Sarkisian. It's like Sarkisian could cost them the SEC championship game and a national championship, but he probably can't cost Archie Manning the Heisman. It turns out that was wrong. First of all, Archie Manning cost himself the Heisman, and then just Sarkisian just snowballed it and it made it worse. And that's the thing, right? And it's funny that if Manning was good, we'd be talking about a 10-2 Texas team, but Manning is bad. And now we're talking about a 8-5 Texas team? Like, what? At least 3 losses, probably a 4th. Maybe even a 5th. There's other teams in there. Like, if you're losing to Florida, there's other teams. There's, like, arguably the rest of the schedule is harder than Florida. Like, arguably.
Yeah, let me pull that up right now. And while I'm doing that, I will say that I don't know if you saw it. I didn't have time to put it in the deck because it just happened late in the process here. But, sorry, give me 1 second. I don't know if you saw this exchange where in today's press conference, some idiot reporter said, I'm surprised how wrong I was about this team. Are you surprised how wrong you were about this team or how they're performing? Did you see this?
I no, I didn't see this. What was this in a?
So it was in like his weekly Monday presser, and his answer was he's like, how many teams are there in FBS? 136. Yeah. So how would the 135 do playing at Ohio State and the Swamp? Just to bring in my Kennesaw State Owls, I'm pretty sure that the Kennesaw State Owls do not have the same resources as Texas. I'm just guessing. I don't know that for sure. I don't have the data.
Yeah.
Yeah. What on earth? I think they just extended him. They're not going to fire him, but this is where it gets bad. It's, oh boy. When we did our preview on what's a good coach, and we had to call him 1, 2, 3, and he was in the Fatally Flawed, I think that, and we're going to talk about another guy who moved to column 3, I just don't think he can outgrow his flaw. I just don't think the runway's there. We know what he is at this point, right?
Yeah.
It's the same thing at 3 spots. He's got a limit here. So he'll recruit. Hey, if Clay Helton could take a Sarkisian roster to the Rose Bowl and win, when Texas does move on, they can hire probably anybody they want. People will be lining up for the talent that'll be left in place there.
Yeah.
And hopefully they're smart enough to not hire Clay Helton. So... The other one that I have a question around here, and this kind of brings us to Red River, which we'll talk about later in Part 2 and in Island Time. My goodness, what is this Oklahoma offense without John Mateer? Now, I was making the point that Michael Hawkins was not that bad last year. This is just like the meal at the restaurant that left me cold. I just wasn't wild about the lamb shank here. It was undercooked. It was still purple inside, and the sauce was bitter. I didn't like what I saw from the offense here. This is a Kent State team that we've made it clear this is a bad defense. The defensive apex of 166, defensive GJAB of 206, which is about as bad as it can get. Their defense is ranked 11.1, negative 11.1. I have concerns about this. Should just have been a gift. And at Oklahoma too, by the way. Michael Hawkins Jr. only had a 97 apex in that. That's a problem. You're only running for 4.5 per attempt against this team. Not to make this an ultra nerd show, but when I run through the metrics of the game, the turnovers and the yards per play and so on, this game should have been 25-0. Oklahoma had 44, I believe. 25 points is that's not acceptable against Kent State. This is not a good defense. I went from unconcerned to serious concerns about this Oklahoma offense.
I've concerns. I think it's a little unfair to do. Again, you just lost your starter for some amount of time. You are bringing him in here. They were preparing for what they thought was a top 10 Texas team. Turns out it's not anymore. So you're trying to just do some very basic plays. That being said, I'd expect a little bit better execution against Kent State, arguably one of the worst teams in all of FBS. Like, this is not... we did okay against a middling team. It's you did okay against one of the worst teams. Maybe, but I would have expected more. I would have wanted to see more. Maybe they didn't give it full effort because they know this is coming up next week, and I don't know. I'm a little I'm concerned, but at the same point in time, I just feel like it's okay, maybe, right? Like, yeah. It's like, you can nitpick, but it's a little hard to nitpick a 45-0 win. That's the thing. So but No, I get it. There is some concerning stuff here. 3 touchdowns looks good, but 6.8 yards an attempt against Kent State. Now maybe they were just trying to do a lot of shorter stuff. Maybe they only wanted Texas to see shorter stuff because they thought, oh, maybe they don't trust him to throw deep or something. And I don't know. It's a little concerning, but I think there's a line for you can only be so concerned about this, especially in this kind of game situation.
Yeah, Hawkins hasn't played for realistic minutes or important minutes under Arbuckle. And I would think that they would want to find out everything. What do we really have here for this guy in the system? So I would definitely want to see a lot more long stuff than what is shown here in the stats here. So I think if you just put 2 and 2 together here, you can see where, when you get to the Week 7 preview, you can see where one of our plays is going to be as a total. But stay tuned for that. All right. Your takeaway here are you throwing the reverse Uno at me?
Yeah, I'm going to reverse Uno here. Again, technically, Buck usually puts his takeaways in the form of a question and usually asks them to me. I usually just say a takeaway. I'm going to throw one onto Buck here. What am I supposed to take away from this game? This is obviously the marquee game of the week, the Saturday night game. Miami beat Florida State 28-22. Perfectly normal score, nothing weird about that. Whatever, 22 is a bit weird, but that's fine. What is weird, though, is that in the first half, and actually first 3 quarters of this game, Miami was just completely dominant, just basically getting up to a lead of 28-3. And in the fourth quarter, Florida State scored 19 points. So, is this like Miami was a dominant team, and then they just let Florida State get back in? Was Florida State just like, they were unlucky for the first half of the game, and then they were able to. What was it like? Are these 2 even teams, or was like Miami just a clearly better team? They just gave up at the end. What's the takeaway for this game from you?
Sarcastically, it depends when you're asking the question. If you're asking now some people are actually making a case for Miami be number 1, and I think it's the case since they have the best resume. I heard some podcasts that I listened to saying, yeah, Miami was happy to let Florida State just go down the field as long as they took their time and earn every yard. I can see that now I'm just going to make something up. In week 12, when Mario blows it against, I don't know, take your pick, NC State in a dumb thing, it'll be complete revisionist history. It'll be like, you saw this coming. Florida State just ran out of time or else they would have won this one. So again, I say it depends on who's asking and when and what context. I'll put it this way. I think that I can buy that Miami was okay just letting Florida State just take their own sweet time. You might recognize a name I'm going to say for maybe the first time with this podcast. It is Corey Heatherman. I believe in this defense, so I'm not concerned about it. And I think Florida State's, I'm probably a little higher on them than the average Bear. I'll just say that too. So I don't really look at 22 points and say, oh my God. Now, 19 points in 1 quarter I'll put it this way. I might flip this a little bit. I might wonder about the offense. Why'd the offense just tuck it up a little bit and turtle a little bit there? No points in the 4th quarter.
Yeah, that's when you're already at 28, right? Maybe you just say, it's okay. So that's very fair, because the thing is, I think probably at this exact moment, Florida State-Miami is maybe the most likely ACC championship game, and maybe Georgia Tech thrown in there. But, so my question is this, because again, obviously you've been high on Corey Heatherman. Now that basically after week 1, I was like, yeah, okay, this team is legit, and especially that defense. So now I'm actually pretty high. I've been high on this Miami team too. But for me personally, like I bet on Miami in this game. That paid off. I was good. I got in, I think, earlier. I think I got in 3.5 the week before, so I was perfect. I was set. But the thing for this is, for me, I cannot shake the feeling that one of these weeks against a really dumb team, they're going to just somehow lose. I cannot shake that feeling. Do you still have that same feeling, or are you like, no, they fixed it? I think
they'll do it once. Like I said, I think the Heatherman thing just narrowed the window for the dumb stuff and how much it can cost them. I will say too, and I didn't grab it and put it in here, I did see a really good data nugget that Miami is just trouncing teams in the first 3 quarters. They've actually been outscored in the 4th quarter, which is interesting. But then again, you've played Notre Dame, you've played South Florida, and you've played Florida State here. It's not like you're doing that against Penn State's schedule here, right?
And Florida too. Florida is there. Apparently they are a team.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah, forgot about that.
Yeah. There you go. Gators. Yeah.
Yes. How should I forget?
It is. I forgot about them too. We're definitely talking about them later. But no, it's very weird. Because like I had halfway through the game, I'm like, Miami clear number one team, but then Florida State came back. I'm like, were they like supposed to be competitive for this whole game? And this was just normalization, or is this just no? They just got lucky, and Miami just didn't care to let them score. Because like it was like at a certain point where it's okay, you have to score and then do an onside kick and then score and then do an onside kick. So did they just say whatever? We're just gonna balance a probability, say we win this game, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I don't know if you noticed this week too. Sometimes when, at some point teams might just take the opponent a little lightly to it sometimes. I don't know if you've noticed that over this last weekend.
Maybe.
I think we're going to talk about that a little later.
Yeah.
You ready for our new segment here?
Yes.
All right, that'll bring us to our newest segment, the Sharpest firing range. Got to tell you, there's nothing better than AI cartoon art where I ask it to put as you can see here if you're watching, put a firing range in a football stadium. We got there. I asked it to include me, and using my Facebook picture, dropped in my beloved Lhasa Apso, Tora, as well. As all good Americans, Tora and I are just encouraging the Canadian to channel his inner American and just shoot people at a football stadium. So, congratulations, Robert.
Yeah, so basically the origins of this was I was like, I had an idea on it, I think it was Sunday, and I was like, oh, because we're going to talk about, we're talking about the kind of range where underperformance versus the spread equals firing. And I said, oh, we should talk about that. But I'm like, oh, we should make some sort of graphic. So I said, oh, do a graphic for shooting range, for like the firing range. And like in my mind, I was thinking like the archery target things, but we just went full gun here. So I'm not sure. Maybe as a Canadian, we just assume it's an archery range, not an actual shooting range. But yeah, okay, that's fair. Maybe we can. But yeah, this is a great attempt. Also, though, don't know why the dog is there in the football stadium. I don't think dogs can go into football stadiums or firing ranges. So that's a little concerning. But still,
He looks a little frightened, but you do have your safety goggles on. Again, very Canadian of you. Right?
You don't though. So that's
no. Why would I? I'm the American.
Yeah.
I'm basically Australian, but just a little more civilized.
What stadium is this? I was trying to. Oh, actually, this picture's still there. What stadium is that?
I think that's a BuckMetrics International.
Yeah, maybe.
So.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. So I think we're gonna make this kind of a recurring segment now, where we just highlight fireable offenses by some coaches here. So on the left now we have the average spreads from 2024 and 2025 there. Basically, in 2024 it was the team on average was like a slight underdog. They lost by 2 scores. Which is a difference of -9. Again, there was a lot of kind of late season firings of just like people weren't fired for the reason they were fired. But this season it's very highly correlated. This season they're a favorite of 7 points. And they've been losing on average by 24 for an average difference of 30 and a half. And just some highlighted ones this week. Obviously, Penn State. Literally any loss by any margin by Penn State would have been a fireable offense. And there you go right there, 29 and a half point underperformance by the spread. Minnesota, a sneakily entrance to this. They were 23 and a half point underdogs. Lost by a whopping 39 for a 15.5 point. Not quite fireable, but close. And maybe just a little like asterisk if you see a Minnesota score getting away from them in the future. Maybe be like, hey, you know what? Maybe that one. Also, another kind of entrance that I think a lot of people don't really think about much. Coastal Carolina, 18.5 point underdogs to Old Dominion, lost by 40 for a 21.5 point underperformance against an already pretty generous spread. Yeah. This is the kind of stuff where you look at this, and if you see, like, in a couple weeks, be like, oh, Tim Beck got fired, or oh, PJ Fleck got fired. Be like, maybe it wasn't because of that week. Maybe it was because of a couple weeks ago. Some stuff to keep in mind.
Yeah, you make a good point. I remember when you had the breakdown before. I think that the earlier in the season, the more egregious it needs to be. Headlined by the folks just up the 405 from me at UCLA. I don't know. I don't know if Minnesota is going to fire one Philip John Fleck, Isaiah's favorite guy. I don't know. They seem to be good fits for each other. Let me ask you this about Coastal Carolina, because I actually mentioned that I've heard a lot of people say this about another program, a couple of programs in Ohio and Madison. Would Coastal take Jamie Chadwell back?
Maybe. I think they probably would. Would he want to go back, though, or would Liberty get rid of him? Because Liberty is not good, but they're not horrendous, right?
It's not working, though. He would have to take a pay cut. I think that's the one thing that would be the stumbling block. I just don't know if he can get his kind of guys at Liberty. I don't know. Maybe in that first year he just got a little. Let's remember, Caden Salter was already on the program and he seemed like a great fit. And maybe just Chadwell can't get his guys to Liberty, not knowing the reputation academically about either one of them, but maybe it's just easier. No, can't say that. Maybe it's like the cultural thing, since Liberty is basically a Bible college, I guess is what we would call it. Is that correct?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, that might be a little harder to recruit too if it's not something like completely upset people here. If it's not like completely a cultural fabric thing like BYU, I guess I'd put it like. I don't know a lot of people who like have Liberty as a big influence in their life growing up in the churches here in California or in Alabama or Virginia for that matter. I guess that's a fair statement, right?
Makes sense. There's not a huge calling of that specific, but yeah, no, it's more difficult. But again, this is like with some of these, it's if at the end of the season, if James is fired, here you go. It was this game, and it was like this. It might come after a 10-point loss to Ohio State or something, but it was this game. It was this game, and or the Oregon game, or it was here. And same for Chadwell there in Coastal.
I think his buyout's too high. I think the takeaway from this season is you don't see any big buyouts here at all of the firings, and I think we've kind of seen peak coach leverage in that you're seeing a lot of the downside of these absurd contracts with the absurd buyout language, and a lot of programs just need more money to go to the players.
But at a certain point, though, like, one thing I don't understand about this, and this is where you get into the whole thing with private equity now and all this stuff, but, like, where was the money going? Okay, you're making a lot of money, but, okay, you can take a couple million of that. Like, what was the money funding? Because you're getting tens of millions of dollars, in some Big Ten programs, $100 million from football revenue, from TV revenue, from ticket sales, from merchandise sales. You're getting millions and millions of dollars here. Where is that money going, like, specifically? And the players obviously are an important part in that. You can't just ignore the players. Like, you should have always known at some point to be like, hey, you know what? We might have to give some of this to the players at some point. Maybe we shouldn't rely on this to, like, paper over massive cracks in the university budget here. There should have been a point when it should have been like, oh, okay, maybe we actually need to make sure there's, like, some cushion here so we can take care of this. And also, isn't this what NIL was supposed to take care of too? Because NIL was supposed to be to paying the players. So if now the schools just pay the players, then can't the people from NIL just pay the school to pay the players? I don't understand why this is so complicated. I don't know.
Come on, you're not thinking like an American here, my guy. Why would I give the money to the school if I can give the money myself and feel like a real important guy? Where's your ego in the matter? Come on, jeez. No, wow. Do better. Come on, you're a smart guy. I'm serious, so that's it. I want to feel like an important guy. I want the player to talk to me and tell me how cute my dog is. Go off with you.
Hand him the check, yeah.
Yes, yeah. All right. I'm looking forward to return of the Sharpest firing range. All right. Now is a segment where we turn into college football Karens. I want to talk to. Look, this is a recurring thing for me. I've got a solution rather than just like crying about I want to talk to. Congratulations to the coaches for ranking Texas 19th because they looked all of number 19 on Saturday and this season. And Penn State 22nd because we know that apparently only 21 teams can lose on the road at UCLA. I guess we just kind of forget about New Mexico and everything else that's happened in there in Utah. I have a solution though, Robert. I was hounding you and Isaiah as the AP just really made a mess of itself. And I looked at the coaches poll until now because this is more egregious. There is this guy, Pipeline. He's actually done what I've wanted to do. He basically has the sharpest people that he sees on Twitter, and he has a community, and he has these people submit their polls. So not only am I promoting the heck out of this, I joined it. For my first time this Sunday, I have the BuckMetrics ratings in there. So
nice.
I want to point out a couple things. What do we see not in the top 25? We do not see Penn State. We do not see Texas, right?
Yes.
Yes, this is called It's Done Right. Look who's at number 23 here. What do we have here? North Texas, the Mean Green. Also, Washington. This is the same Washington I think 2 weeks ago was not receiving any votes in the AP. This is the smart people top 25. Everybody, you got to follow this guy at PYPELINE _ I guess everything else by Pipeline was already taken, but this is well worth it. This is a very informed top 25. This is what you need to follow. I'm going to promote the hell out of this, and we're going to make this the alternative to the crappy polls that dictate crappy conversation in our beloved sport.
Yes, agreed. It's well past time. I will say I was actually, and it actually is so telling that, because a lot of people said he saw Tom Fornelli and Nicole. I can't remember what the last name is.
Auerbach?
Yeah, Auerbach. They were like, they both said, they're like, Penn State and Texas shouldn't be in the AP top 25. They said, I don't know if they're going to do it, but they shouldn't be. I think both of them are actually AP voters too, which is funny. And to their credit, the AP actually kicked them out. You know what? Shout out to them. For this, I don't know if they owe like James Franklin money or something. I don't know. But the thing is, like, Texas is, it shouldn't be in the top 25, but it's arguable. You could say, okay, maybe. That one's maybe arguable, but Penn State is not arguable. Let's say the team above it, Iowa State at UCLA, what's the spread? 14.5? Easily? Right? This is the thing. Like, Penn State should not be in the top 25. Texas, and I really like Texas being just outside the top 25. That's probably more fair. But again, that could very easily fall a lot more. This is the newest one. I actually really like this top 25. I really like that Washington's there. I really like that North Texas is there. I like that Memphis is there, that USF isn't just the number one G5 team just because they beat Florida that one time. So I really like that. I'm a little confused as to why Ole Miss is ahead of Texas A&M, but that's extremely debatable. When we're talking about when the difference is Texas and Penn State being in the top 25 versus maybe Ole Miss is better than or worse than Texas, that's fine. We can have that debate. That's a debate we can have. But we're forced to having debate is like whether or not Texas and Penn State should be in the top 25. That's a completely different world when we're talking about that. And again, Alabama 9th, Georgia 10th. That actually makes a lot of sense. Indiana 4th. That actually is very correct too, right? Yeah. I really like this, and I gotta sign up for this too. I gotta figure out how to get us both on this, and we gotta, yeah.
Yeah, I want to point out too, by the Smart People poll, the American is the top 25 matchup. North Texas and South Florida this upcoming week. Stay tuned to the Week 7 preview for that, right?
Yeah, I'm excited for that one. I saw that line and I was like, oh, I'm excited for that game. But no, this is such a long time coming because, and again, I don't know why the coaches. Do you know him? Do you text him sometimes? Like, why is he 19th? Why is he 19th? And why is Franklin 22nd? They should not be that way. And there are so many reasons why Penn State should not be ranked. There's so many reasons why Texas shouldn't be ranked. And also, I do like in the smart person top 25 that Oregon is 3rd because it's not their fault that they beat apparently a mortally flawed Penn State team. But again, that should count for something. And if you want to make the argument that Oregon's better than Miami, that's a very fair argument. But yeah, if you're doing this just by what it should be, then yeah, Miami should be ahead of. Again, Oregon is going to be fine. You can knock them down a couple spots. They're going to be fine. They've got a whole season ahead of them. They're fine. But yeah, they should get a little bit of a hit for that. So that's fine. But yeah, no, I don't understand why. I don't understand how the AP had more stomach to get rid of Texas and Penn State than the AP. I don't understand how they had more stomach to get rid of them than the coaches. I don't understand that at all.
I think they were actually hearing it from people. Also, just to your point about having a beer with 19 and 22, I gotta tell you, 19 and 22, I would love to have a beer with Bielema and Kenny Dillingham. I don't know. How about you?
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, I'd love that. Illinois is actually like sneakily really good. Like I'm very impressed. I'm also impressed with Purdue. They're obviously not like a top 25 team, but like they're actually not bad at all. I'm very impressed with them.
They're a real football team. That was like a much higher quality game than people expected. All right, what? You want to talk to the Big Ten schedule maker? Is that what this is about?
Yeah, no, so this is the thing, and there's a meme, and Isaiah's on this meme, and other people are too, where it's, October Maryland, and it struck again this week, except it just struck in the second half, not in the first half. It became October in the second half of this game. How is this a thing? I honestly don't understand how they can be so dominant in the month of September, but only September. The second the calendar moves over to October, suddenly they turn horrible. Or specifically in this game, the second they get into the second half of this game, they turn horrible. I have no idea how this happened. They were up a lot. They were up like
20-0.
Yeah, they were up 20-0. And somehow they lost 24 to 20 against a Washington team coming cross country. It's crazy. And again, look at this, 2024, right? They lost their last game in September, but then they just fell apart all through October. In 2020,
go ahead and say it.
Until USC, yes.
Yes.
But then they didn't come within a touchdown the rest of the way. Oh. Same as in 2023, they won every game in September and then lost every game in October and then only beating Nebraska and Rutgers in November. That's great. And then a bit more of a mixed bag in 2022, but again, then you pull off a couple wins in October against what was at that point a bad Indiana team, and you still barely beat a bad Indiana team. And Northwestern, another bad team. I think that was the year they fired their. Wasn't that the year they had no coach?
No, that was Fitzgerald's last year, but
Oh, okay.
they went, I think, like 1-11 or 2-10 or something.
Yeah. And then Rutgers again. Is that their rival? Is Rutgers their rival? End of season rival? I keep playing them in Thanksgiving week for some reason.
Who else would it be? It's that vaunted I-95 thing, right?
True. Yeah. Actually, that is. There's not many other regional rivalries. But yeah, no. Why is this a thing? Like, I can't even think of a physical like reason why. Like, why would a team be good in September and then just bad the rest of the month? Is it like cold? I don't understand. I don't. What's the? I don't. I can't understand the physical reason why a team would be so much better in one month of the year than the other 2 months of the year. I don't understand it.
Either conference play, or it's cold and all their guys are like from Florida and Louisiana.
But Florida also has a football team.
Yeah,
Like,
but it's not cold there. So
true.
it's his own guys aren't used to it being cold. We're really grasping for straws here. Also, how cold is it like the first week of October in Maryland?
I'm not near Maryland, but I'm not that far from Maryland, and it's been a relatively warm fall so far.
Yeah. No, I mean consistency. My gosh, just in droves here in College Park, right? Yeah. All right, victory laps. I've got 3 quick ones here, and we'll get to this whole story later. I just have to say, literally, I just said 1 week ago, is Penn State where college wide receivers go to die? And we will get into this game a lot later in the podcast. But in Penn State's loss to UCLA, wide receivers 7 receptions for all of 67 yards. And this is a UCLA defense that had a defensive apex of 148 going into the game. Look, I have to undo all the kudos I gave to Andy Kotelnicki. I seriously think he walked in the right thing at Penn State where they had an All-American tight end, and he beat the heck out of that. And I think he still thinks that he has Ty Warren there at tight end.
Yeah, I don't understand this just inability to adapt, right? Like, it's like you... And again, this is not... There were warning signs of this. There were warning signs against FIU. There was warning signs against Oregon that this team was nowhere near as dominant as it should have been. And again, 200 receiving yards against a UCLA team that lost to New Mexico. Like, how is that possible? Again, this should not have been a difficult matchup. You should have... Drew Aller, if you had gone full out for the full... Which, to be fair, your team had to go full out because you were losing. Had he gone full out, that should have been like 300 passing yards. 150 rushing yards, easy. And like and the leading rusher having four receptions for 52 yards. It's crazy. I don't understand how they've just given up on offense and they just can't. And again, this is it's just maybe an inability to adapt. They're just like, this is the offense. We're just going to keep running this offense. And again, it's how many times after the half, because there was right after the half there was like a fumble. They basically threw a small screen. Like first play after the half, right? I think they were down. Let's just do a quick scoreboard here. They were down 27-7, right? You get the ball first thing in the second half. What's the first play you run? You've got to start getting something going. You've got to try to get some big plays. Screen 2 yards behind the line of scrimmage. Get stopped. What are you doing? You need to do something. You're down 20 points on the road against a really bad team. This is when you get out there and you score on that first drive. You get a couple of big plays. You get back to you get 27-14. You give it to your defense. They shut them down. And you get right back into this game. That's what you should be doing. Not messing around with screens. Not being like, we're just going to run up the middle. And then they try to run up the middle and they fumbled it. Like, that should have been that moment. That, to me, that's the issue on the offense there. Is that, like, right then, that's when you should have immediately said, okay, we're gonna start playing offense now. We're gonna crush you guys because we are better, and they are better than them. They're a better team, straight up. There's no way.
Yeah.
Even before the season, like ignoring where they currently are now and how UCLA's underperformed. If you take preseason UCLA, Penn State was still better than them. At the beginning of the season, they would have been 20 point, 14.5, 17.5 point favorites against this team. This was a particularly close matchup before the season started. And it's gotten even worse since. This is UCLA's first win, and you're telling me that you can't just immediately just power? You just be like, okay, we're just gonna crush you now. Like you can't even do that. It's crazy to me. It's crazy how this was so competitive.
I for the last couple of weeks I've been saying I don't know what they're doing. I don't know what they're trying to do, and it just in hearing you talk, it came to me. You know what? This is just scared play calling. It's like they don't believe in their own offense. They're not trying to just assert dominance. This is the most dominant matchup you're going to have in conference play until Northwestern in 5 days now. But this is where you have to assert yourself and just say, look, we are way higher in the food chain than you. And it was like the exact opposite. It's just these weird. Literally, it reminds me how Mike Riley would drive us nuts at USC with all these things. It's okay, shit, you got us with this. You're smaller than us. You're not as fast as us, but you tricked us. And it's just this kind of thing where it's no, you're bigger and stronger and faster, but you're not. They're not calling plays like it. That's the real crime here, I think.
Yeah, it's like with Bama under Saban or Ryan Day, Ohio State, some of the most dominant teams. They're like, we're better than you, and we're just gonna shove it in your face. Bama would be like, we've got Derrick Henry, and we're just gonna run the ball. You can't stop us. We've got a first-round running back and 3 first-round offensive linemen. Yeah, we're just gonna run the ball. Could we throw it? Yeah, but we're just gonna run it now. We're gonna tire you out, and then we're gonna open up the passing lanes, and then we're gonna pass for 40 yards. That's what they did. But Penn State's, okay, let's try this screen. Be like, why are we doing this? You're better than them. You have a quarterback who was at one point, I'm fairly sure after Clemson lost to LSU, he was probably either the favorite or the co-favorite for first overall pick, and probably even the Heisman favorite, or either way, an early season contender for Heisman and first round NFL pick overall. You've got that at quarterback, and the best you can do is screens. Like, what are we doing here? And it's funny because remember that one play against Oregon where there's like the 50-yard bomb. That one wasn't a screen. They just let it loose, and they scored. That saved. Like, the thing is, had that play not happened, they could have lost to Oregon by 3 scores potentially. And I think we undercount that because that got them back in the game, that got them life. But had that play not worked, had that play not blown up for Oregon, that might have been a 2 or 3 score loss for Penn State. And then this result would make a lot more sense then in that case.
Yeah, agree. All right. Second victory lap. I've got 3 here. I pointed out last week in our part 2 when we were previewing week 6, I said, going over the player metrics, I said, this is crazy. Air Force has the top rated quarterback, and they have, which in the academies, and we'll see that when you get to the week 7 preview here. But this is the first time we'd ever seen an academy guy as a top receiver. And I said, this is a different Air Force offense. We've never seen that from the academies. And I bring this up because my model had it, and it was a play last week for one of my model totals. This went way over the Air Force against Navy. And I want to point out, Liam Zarka did his thing with a beautiful 212 apex. But here's what's even crazier, Robert. Their leading receiver, 6 for 166. This guy, Bruin, apparently it was a great weekend for anybody Bruin or playing for the Bruins. Bruin Fleischman, 6 for 166. The Cade Harris guy, who was number 3 in Ryan last year, only had 3 catches for 7 yards. This is like a truly diverse offense. This is kind of peak Norm Chow at USC, if you will.
Yeah, no, it's what a crazy thing. And I think they lost this game, right?
Yeah, Navy beat them by 3.
Yeah. It just huge offensive explosion here, but yeah, this is a really good Air Force team, but they lost and
offensively.
Let's clarify that. They're really good on offense. They're really bad on defense, but they're very good on offense. Just a 212 apex, 200. It's just a crazy offensive weekend for them. They're really good offensively, but they just can't stop you defensively at all, and that's going to be their weakness.
Yeah, not too wild about tackling. All right. The third one here, and this is more of a gift to you, but I'm gonna take a little bit of a victory lap here. This is, as I've been, one of my things I just make a point of, to the point of exhaustion, I think, to a lot of people. Good reporters are great reporters, and good reporters are horrible analysts. And Bruce Feldman and Ralph Russo, when you stick to reporting, you get gold like this. And this is more of a victory lap for you and the content of this. They got this beautiful quote from a G5 coach. It was about Belichick, and I'll just read it for the people who are driving or doing dishes. So this G5 coach said about North Carolina, he said, did they not understand they're in the ACC, not like Conference USA or the Sun Belt? Like, we got beat by North Carolina, a bunch of kids. I was like, why the F is North Carolina beating us on kids? When I keep running up against the same Power 4 teams over and over again and recruiting, I'm like, okay, they're going to suck. Robert, who else on this podcast has been saying that for weeks now?
Yes. And this is exactly what I said. I didn't see this. Shout out for this call out. But yeah, this is what I said. I said they're trying to play Moneyball, and it's not. It's just buy the best players. And this is exactly what I said, right? I said Bill Belichick, great coach, horrible talent evaluator, and him randomly competing with P4 schools for random players. That's Bill Belichick behavior right there. That's classic Bill Belichick behavior. Be like, I like this random kid because I saw him like pancake block someone. It'd be like, that's not what we're doing here. That's not. Take a 5-star. Go pay a 5-star. Go hand a 5-star a bag of cash. That's what you do. Don't go to some kid from like some random high school that had one good shot on tape. Don't do that. But this is where North Carolina is, and again, it's bad. They got crushed by Clemson. Clemson easily covered the spread. I think it's probably one of the first times they covered a spread all season.
Yes.
Actually, yes, it is. It's the first time they covered a spread all season against this North Carolina team, and it wasn't particularly close. Also, fun fact about this North Carolina team, this season, this week at least, I'm not sure. Maybe it's because of injury or not. Gio Lopez did not play. They just played Max Johnson. So they finally committed to Max Johnson. But he also just sucked too. So it doesn't matter anymore. We're just now at this point where it's just they're not making a bowl. I bet under some number, 7.5. It doesn't matter. It's under 3.
Did you see? I don't even call it a highlight, but I'll call it a replay play, where North Carolina receiver had just beaten his man. There's nobody within 10 yards of him, and Max Johnson threw the ball like 5 yards out of bounds. I don't know if did you see this play? It was
yeah.
Just I don't know. Arch would have had that guy in the end zone. I can just tell you that. All right, are you going to do a victory lap here for this? Whatever mascot it is.
Yeah, is it? What's the name of this mascot? I'm not sure. It's not Lumpy.
It's. I want to say it's like the Appalachian cousin of Grimace, the McDonald's.
The redneck Grimace.
Yes, I'll look it up while you're going here.
Yeah, no. Shout out to Western Kentucky, right? This was our pick to win, at least my pick to win Conference USA, 5-1, beating a surprisingly good Delaware team. Delaware, unfortunately, ineligible for the Conference USA Championship for BS reasons, but apparently they're actually really good. We didn't really miss because it doesn't really matter, but I guess we missed on this Delaware team. This Delaware team apparently is actually really good, and I can't wait to play them in Maction Kazakhstan. Yeah, and I think technically it starts this week. It's a Wednesday though. It's not a Tuesday Kazakhstan yet, but there's some this week. I can't wait to start playing some Kazakhstan midweek. But yeah, like somehow it's crazy this Delaware team is actually like good, and that Western Kentucky is better. And looking at the schedule, we got FIU. They just lost by like $1 billion to Connecticut. At Louisiana Tech, New Mexico State, Middle Tennessee State, which lost to an FCS team. You've got LSU. Okay, fine, whatever. That'd be really funny, but it's not going to happen. And at Jacksonville State, or no, at Jackson State, not Jacksonville State. No,
Jacksonville.
It's Jacksonville.
State.
Jacksonville, Jacksonville, Mississippi, not Jacksonville. The other Jacksonville. And then that's the final game there. But yeah, a very clear path and their only loss was out of conference. So very clear path to the conference championship game. And yeah, it's again also kind of thing on here. It's very sad Delaware isn't eligible. That's very sad, and that's still a BS rule. But yeah, shout out to Western Kentucky doing things here. They're looking pretty good.
That game against Louisiana Tech in 3 weeks looms large because I have Louisiana Tech as the top-rated Conference USA team. It's on the road, and that could be a tiebreaker, an important one for the tiebreaker if it comes to it. But otherwise, yeah, I do like their path too. That mascot's name is Big Red.
Yeah, that's an accurate description.
Yes. All right. Things that randomly bugged Robert this week.
Yeah. So this is a very late entry into this. There wasn't much that bugged me this week. I was mostly okay, and then on Monday I watched Joel Klatt. And this came up, and then basically can Florida still make a run at the college football playoff after their win over Texas? And I'm like, oh, what? And somehow it's not just him, because I was looking at the odds on, I want to say it was Sunday night. I think it was Sunday night, because FanDuel updates playoff odds for all of the teams. And I was looking at a lot of them, and Florida was still on the board. And it was like something like, I'm like, basically the way it is, you have Florida, and you have to click on it, and you get the odds. And I'm like, oh, it's got to be something insane, like 100-1 or something. And it was like 18-1. I'm like, that seems insane. That seems really crazy. And I'm like, FanDuel, just letting people give them money for free. And then I see Joel Klatt talking about it. I'm like, why are people talking about this? This is clearly, first of all, this week they're 8.5-point underdogs to Texas A&M. Like, again, they're just straight up an underdog to Texas A&M. They lose that game, they're done. Just straight up. This isn't even, oh, if they lose that game, then there's another. No, that's it. Done. Game over. Done. For the SEC championship game, which is their only path, and at-large path too. Still make a bowl,
Yep.
whatever, but not. But like, why are you betting on something when it's already a plus 200 just to get to next week? Like, you're already at plus 200 just to survive to next week, and you're like, okay, then maybe it pays off. Like, why are we entertaining this? And the craziest thing about this, about Joel Klatt's segment, is he's saying, oh, Florida, and he's listing off the path. Again, I mentioned the fact that they're 8.5-point underdogs to Texas A&M this week, but mentioning but he's basically, oh, you know what? Any other team with any other 3-loss team would be a problem, but this Florida team, they've had a really tough schedule and stuff, and it's okay. That's crazy, but okay. But then his next breath after finishing that, he says, Texas, their back's up against the wall. I'm like, you can't. What kind of double standard is this? You can't be like, you know what? This Florida team play a tough schedule. Their 0-3 is really bad, but Texas, man, 0-2, it's over for them. Like, you can't. What is this insane double standard? Like, technically, Texas's losses, I guess, theoretically, are better than Florida's. They didn't lose to a G5 team, at least not yet. And I believe they have another G5 team on their schedule, so at least they're saved from that fate. But, like, you can't have this insane double standard. You can't be like, Florida maybe can make it, but Texas, they're done. What is that insane double standard? You can't be like, that's crazy. I'm not crazy. That's an insane double standard to have, right?
Well, yeah, especially considering Texas does have a pretty rough path going. They still have to play Oklahoma, A&M, and Georgia.
Yeah.
So they could play. I don't see them doing it. The path is there. It's pretty narrow. But yeah, any argument you're making for Florida, you would have to make for Texas. Except the fact that obviously depends on which is more your flavor of, or your varietal of wine. Are you more of a Billy Napier guy or a Steve Sark guy?
Yeah.
Fired Billy Napier guy.
Billy Napier, yeah.
Yes.
It is. It's clearly fired Billy Napier at this point, but the thing is, maybe that, you know what? Maybe that's what Cristobal was doing, right? He wanted to activate fired Billy Napier. So then he's going to take out other teams, and it's going to get me a first-round bye. That was the plan. He's going to take out the rest of the SEC. This is the crazy thing that a lot of analysts do, and a lot of people in the media specifically do, where they're like, oh, Florida won, maybe they're good, but Texas lost, maybe they're bad. It's just like you have to be able to have two thoughts in your head. Like, one, Florida can still be bad, and they can still beat Texas, and Texas can both be bad. Just because one team won doesn't mean they're a good team. Like, this Florida team is still really bad. It's a miracle they actually won this game. They really shouldn't have won this game. But I think people saying, oh, Florida won this game because they're good. It's like, no, Florida won this game because Texas is really bad. Like, we really need to be able to have two thoughts in our heads as analysts for this game. But apparently a lot of people can't have that.
Yeah, I was looking up. Joel Klatt's show is weekly, not daily. I was going to give him some slack and say, look, if you're doing like 4 episodes a week, you're going to run out of stuff. Basically see the Stephen A. Smith career where you say anything about anything just to fill the space. To your point, though, if it's weekly, I think he needs to find a new staff that's giving him ideas. Well, and this is not me talking to my ass. I do this ourselves, and we get better shit than this. Pardon my language, folks, but come on.
He does. So technically, he does a couple a week. But to be fair, though, one of them is just exclusively about the next week's game, streaming the next week's game. So that one's shorter. But yeah, this was, and it's not like he did a whole like segment on this. This was like a 1 or 2 minute throwaways. You could have very easily cut. This would have been so easy. If you're sitting there in the thing and he's, what? Why? How could Florida do this? You just like, we cut this in post. Cut this in post, guys. It's fine. Like, why? Why? I don't. You can't simultaneously make an argument that a 3-loss Florida team can get to the playoff game, but an 0-2 like a 2-loss Texas team is just done. Like, you can't. And Florida isn't good. Like, I don't.
In theory, you have to, though, when your 3 AC teams have shrunk to 1 in the course of 3 weeks, though.
Yeah. So, like, this is going to be, like, that's true, right? Because remember, that was his first week. Like, 3 ACT teams are going to get in the thing, and that's dead now. So now we're on this now. So watch, Florida's going to lose by 20 to A&M and be like, yeah, my Florida wasn't good. But Texas, maybe if Texas wins Red River and Florida gets crushed, it'd be like, Texas has got a path. It'd be like, no, that's not how this works.
You're underthinking this. He's a Fox guy. He's going to be making the case for either Illinois or USC then. Next, depending on basically who's going to be on Big Noon within the next couple of weeks. Okay, man, I don't know. I feel like I'm missing out on a whole lot of nothing by not watching that. Probably. God bless you for watching it, though. All right, Jimbo Awards. We've traversed a lot of ground here already on just this Penn State loss to UCLA. I just laid out here just how stupid this is. I've got UCLA, what they've done on a per play basis by each game and what their opponents did. So this was by far, this was basically UCLA's best game in terms of yards per play offensively against Penn State. Congratulations, Penn State. You couldn't quite match the vaunted defense of UNLV, who could not line up straight, and New Mexico, who is made up like half of guys that played literally for Idaho last year. So congratulations on that. And again, offensively, Penn State, you did worse against UCLA than UNLV and New Mexico. These are two Mountain West schools. I found on Saturday, again, I like to prop the guys who actually, and this is good analysis, I consider. This is great analysis. This is a great way to put it. Chris Vanini at The Athletic, he said, look, they thought they fixed their whole roster, they lost a couple guys, but they got in the receivers, they got this, they got Jim Knowles in, and this just says it's so great. It said, instead, this looks just like last year's team, but missing its two best players. I could not have said it any better than myself. What a beautiful way to put it. That's exactly what the problem is. I think going in line with the scared play calling that I stumbled into as you spurred me into that. What a horrible coaching job. And I want to go back to literally just a week before. You might remember, Robert, this gets completely overlooked at this point. After Oregon scored what was the winning touchdown in the second overtime, let's not forget they failed in the 2-point conversion. And that seemed to be like, this is going to be the difference. Because now all Penn State needs is a touchdown and a 2-point, and they're going to win. And James Franklin, it's all different, everything, right? And right away, boom, you get smacked in the face, interception on the first play. And I'm not going to... I think fan bases tend to be too impatient, notwithstanding the fun we have in the firing range. I think that coaches need a long leeway. I'm not saying that he needs to be fired for this. I can't say... I'm not gonna rip a guy for being like the 17th best coach if he's paid like the 8th best. It's an imperfect thing. He's getting his leverage, fine, whatever. But you cannot let this shock of the interception, you have to get past that. You cannot lose to a team that is clearly as bad and out, that you basically you out-resource in every single way, in every position, administratively, coaching staff, players, everything. And I'm not going to say he's overpaid because he can't beat Oregon or Ohio State. That's maybe his place in the universe, and he's leveraged a lot of money. But losing what he is paid for is to not lose this kind of game to UCLA. And if it's going down the drain, he needs to throw chairs or throw a guy through the chalkboard or something. That's what he needs to do to pull the win out. As the great Don Draper said, that's what the money is for. That's what he's paid to do. He's not paid to beat Ohio State. He's not paid to beat Michigan, but he's paid to beat UCLA, and that was just a capital F fail.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing, right? And we've said that many times, right? We expect, and I think that came up a lot in our preseason analysis for Penn State. Be like, yep, they'll lose to Ohio State, they could lose to Oregon or Indiana or or both of them or something like that. They will lose the games they'd lose the games you expect them to lose. Oh, I see, okay. They'll lose the games you expect them to lose, but they're going to always win the games you expect them to win. Maybe those are closer than they should be, but they should have won those games. And UCLA is 1,000% a game that they should have won. And if we're now at a point where they start losing some of those games, that's a problem. And the thing is, again, in terms of Oregon, what did Oregon even start the season at? Like 10th or something? Something insane, probably. Yeah. Like, the amount of pressure that was on Penn State this year, the amount of expectations that was on Penn State this year was insane. And some of that was fairly assessed. A lot of it wasn't. But the thing is still, though, it's like the expectation for you was Big Ten championship, like a Big Ten championship playoff, getting a playoff championship, getting at least very close to the at least matching last year's semifinal appearance was very much like expected. And it's very much in doubt whether or not they're even going to get there. Because you've still got Ohio State and you've got Indiana. I'm fairly sure they're going to be underdogs in both of those games. I say it again for the second week, I have Indiana plus 16.5. This is just a joke. It's just cool. Okay. But this is the thing, right? What are you, like, you're supposed to win those games. And if you had 3 losses and maybe the playoff committee just scoops you in and you get thrown in against a mediocre other team and then that's how you get through, I don't know. But that's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to win those games, and that's the game you're supposed to win, and you lost it. So something clearly has gone wrong. Yep.
Although, to your point, it's very likely not going to happen, but the path is there. If they win out, if they beat Ohio State and Indiana, you can't keep that team out. I don't care how bad this loss was, but it's
you have to now.
Yeah, you have to. And it's literally just, you can't do that at this point. It's his program. This is not like a year one or year two guy who's getting rid of remnants of the prior staff, and it just, yeah, cannot happen. All right. You're going to besmirch somebody I was just been talking so nicely of on the podcast here.
So, one thing I'm just copying your exact chart from the last slide because I liked it so much. We've been talking a lot about Texas's offense. And that's very fair because it's also bad. Let's talk about Texas's defense now because it's also apparently really bad. This is Florida's yards per play on offense, peaking pre this game at 6.1 against an FCS team, and not a particularly good FCS team. 6.1 against Long Island, 5.5 against the G5 in USF, 4.8 at LSU, not great. 2.7 versus Miami, that's rough. That exploded to a 7 against Texas. 7 yards of play against Texas's defense. A team that held Ohio State to 14 points. That's a problem. That's a massive problem. What? Hey guys, this is a huge issue. Why did Florida suddenly have their best offensive game against you? Because people were they basically scored 10 offensive points against LSU. I think they scored 7 against Miami, including basically for a while, I'm fairly sure people were openly calling for Billy Napier's firing maybe through the Miami game. And now you're at a point where you allowed that offense, a team that scored 7 points and 10 points in the last 2 games, you let them get 7 yards per play against you, outright win the game on offense too. Because again, if you'd only given up 14, yeah, you would have won that game. But you didn't. Because Florida had their best offensive game against you. Also, on the flip side of that, defensively, just figuring out where Texas's offense falls, apparently they're at LSU level, which actually makes a lot of sense when you think about it. So their offense is basically the same as on par with LSU's. And that's concerning in its own way, but still, though, but Miami had a bad offensive game there, but to be fair, they just stopped caring on offense when they were up like 1 billion points. But this is the thing. It's like we talk a lot about the offense, and there's very real things to talk about in an offense. But the defense was their hallmark last year, and it was their hallmark this year. That was the thing that kept them in these games this year, and was one of the reasons why they got as far as they did last year. And if that suddenly is breaking, and again, it is also questionable too, right? Because this is the thing now. If you look at Ohio State, you're like, hey, Florida scored, something like 27 or something? I can't remember what the final number was. It was a weird number. It was
29.
29, yeah, a weird number somehow. Florida scored 29 against you. Ohio State scored, and this was again on the road in both cases, on the road at Ohio State, on the road at Florida. Florida scored 29. Ohio State scored 14. So where's that difference? Is that Ohio State's offense isn't as good as we thought it was, and they've just been playing a bunch of bad teams because they have been, with the exception of Washington? Or is it the fact that Texas's offense or the fact that maybe Texas's defense is getting worse in real time, and we're not seeing it because they played a bunch of G5 teams? That's an interesting question. We'll find more about that this weekend, especially with Ohio State and Texas playing meaningful games. But that's the thing to keep in mind. It'd be like, hey, your defense was the thing keeping you alive, and if that's gone now, where's the floor here? Like, where's the floor?
I will say too, in the Week 7 preview, it's the defense for Texas did not land at the same spot where it was last week. I can just say that for sure. They had been the number one since I've had the full metrics after Week 4. So stay tuned for that to the Week 7 preview. All right, a few things noted for future reference here. Virginia, they pulled one out against Louisville, 37% post-game win probability. I forgot that their game against NC State was a non-conference game, so they're actually undefeated in conference play. I failed to realize that when I was looking at their Virginia in a really good spot. Undefeated in conference play, and they've beaten their toughest opponent to date. The toughest game they have left in conference is Pitt, as remember that graphic I did last week. They actually changed quarterbacks. They have foregone Eli Holstein with this guy. Boy, this looks like a German name too. My mom is German, so I should know this. Mason Heinschel, I'm guessing. He had a 127 apex in his debut. Maybe this is the guy. Remember when they brought in Cade Bell, there was a lot of high expectations, and it didn't really take that well in Pitt. Maybe he's found his guy here in this Mason Heinschel we'll go with for now. So that'll be interesting. Let's not get carried away with Clemson, everybody. Oh, he said for the 6th time in 6 weeks here. Clemson with 31 rushes and 89 yards, less than 3, as you're just basically walking over an overmatched opponent. Now, maybe they weren't trying, I don't know, but let's just put this context around this point, this margin here. Noah Fafita played himself, or as Rabbi Ray calls him, Noah Sizzling Fajita. Played his way off the bum list, I think as usually happens when you play Oklahoma State, 159 Apex there. And finally, Fresno State. Might recall they lost week 0 to Kansas. They are 4-0 since. I didn't realize that. The Mountain West is shaped up to be something really interesting. So, any reactions to any of these?
No, I will say though that it is still really funny that UNC's defense is so bad. They still only average 2.9 yards a rush.
Yes.
That's nuts. Again, this is like it's far more an indictment of Clemson than of UNC is already bad, but the fact that you're still only able to do that against a bad team it's telling, right?
Yeah. Yep. All right. And with that, we thank you for watching our Week 6 review. Stay tuned for our Week 7 preview. We'll be going over games upcoming this week and the metrics and a new metric. So stay tuned for that. We will see you then shortly. Until then, bye-bye.